3 a.m., sitting in the dark, staring at my wife's phone on the kitchen counter. A single notification lit up the cold marble surface. I shouldn't have been looking, but the silence in our house had become too loud to ignore. I swiped the screen, and the floor beneath me just vanished. It wasn't a love confession, not in the traditional way. It was something much colder. I realized my entire marriage was a beautifully constructed lie. And the worst part was, I finally understood exactly why she had done it. We were the couple everyone wanted to be. We had the suburban house with the big windows, the stable jobs, the quiet weekend routines. I took immense pride in that stability. I thought being the provider, the rock, was the ultimate achievement of a good man. Elena used to tell me how safe I made her feel. She would lean her head on my shoulder after a long day and sigh with relief. The kitchen clock would tick in the background, a steady, comforting heartbeat of our existence. I would sit in my armchair, feeling the heavy fabric beneath my hands, and think I was the luckiest man alive. I thought safety was the same thing as love. I thought that by giving her a life without storms, I was giving her everything she could ever want. We spent 6 years building that fortress together. We never fought, we never screamed, and we never doubted our future. We just drifted on a calm, endless sea of predictability. I did everything right, or so I believed. I paid the mortgage on time, I remembered every anniversary, and I planned for a future that felt guaranteed. It was a comfortable, warm existence. But warmth can make you sleepy. It can blind you to the cold drafts coming in through the cracks. I didn't realize that a fortress can easily start to feel like a cage. To me, our life was peace, but to her, it was a slow, quiet suffocation. She didn't want the white picket fence as much as she wanted the fire that burns it down, and for 6 years, I was too blind to see the matches she was hiding. It started when my younger brother, Leo, came to stay with us for the summer. Leo was everything I was not. He was unpredictable, loud, and didn't care about tomorrow. He changed jobs every few months and drove a beat-up motorcycle that leaked oil on our pristine driveway. The smell of motor oil mixed with her vanilla perfume in the hallway, a scent that didn't belong in our house. It made my stomach tighten every time I walked past the guest room door. The first night he stayed with us, the energy in the house shifted immediately. At the dinner table, Leo told a story about hitchhiking through South America without a penny in his pocket. Elena laughed. It wasn't the polite, soft laugh she gave me. It was loud, bright, and almost breathless. I felt a sudden, sharp pinch in my chest, but I pushed it away. He's my brother, I told myself, and she's just being a good host. But the shifts became harder to ignore as the weeks went by. I would come home from the office and find them in the kitchen together. The air would feel heavy, vibrating with something I couldn't name. They weren't doing anything wrong, just talking and leaning against the counter. But when I walked in, the conversation would halt abruptly. Elena would straighten her posture and ask about my day in a flat, monotone voice. The life in her eyes would drain out, replaced by the polite mask she wore for me. One evening, I heard her laughing from the backyard while I was in the study. I looked through the window and saw Leo showing her how to fix a spark plug on his bike. Her hands were covered in grease, and she was smiling wider than I had seen in years. I realized then that she was looking at him the way she used to look at me before I became the bill payer and the rule maker. A dark suspicion started to take root in my gut. It wasn't about him being better than me. It was about him being dangerous. And suddenly, I understood that danger was exactly what she was craving. The secrets started piling up like dry leaves before a storm. It began with small things, subtle omissions, that felt like splinters under my skin. Elena stopped asking me when I'd be home from work. She didn't need to know my schedule anymore, which meant she could plan around it without me knowing. I would find Leo's leather jacket draped over our dining room chair, still warm from being worn. I'd find an extra coffee cup in the sink with her lipstick on the rim and Leo's thumbprint on the ceramic. I tried to convince myself I was just being paranoid. I buried myself in my work, staying late at the office just to avoid the heavy silence waiting for me at home. But you can't outrun the truth when it lives under your own roof. One night I woke up at 2 a.m. to get a glass of water. The floorboards creaked under my bare feet. I stopped at the top of the stairs when I saw the light from the kitchen bleeding into the dark hallway. I heard murmurs. low, secretive whispers that cut off the second my foot hit the next step. I didn't go down. I went back to bed, staring at the ceiling until the sun came up, wondering what they had been talking about in the dark. A few days later, I left work early because of a blinding migraine. When I pulled into the driveway, Leo's motorcycle was gone, but Elena's car was parked in the garage. I unlocked the front door quietly, not wanting to disturb her if she was resting. The house was dead silent. I walked up the stairs, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I paused outside our bedroom door. I heard her voice, low and breathless, coming from inside. She wasn't talking to me, and the tone of her voice made my blood run cold. I reached for the door handle, my hand shaking uncontrollably. I stopped myself inches from the brass knob. I was absolutely terrified of what I might see if I opened that door. I didn't open it. Instead, I turned around, walked back down the stairs, and drove back to the office. I sat in my cubicle for 4 hours, staring at a blank screen. The fear of knowing was worse than the suspicion. I started checking the cell phone bills online that night. I saw late-night calls between them, time-stamped while I was sleeping right next to her in our bed. I saw text logs that stretched into the thousands. I became a ghost in my own home, a spectator watching my life get dismantled from the inside. I would sit at the dinner table with them, eating my food, while they shared inside jokes I didn't understand. They had created a private world right in the middle of my living room, and I was locked on the outside. Every glance they exchanged felt like a physical blow. I was suffocating, trapped between my duty as a husband and my pride as a man. I kept waiting for someone to confess, for the bubble to burst. But they just kept smiling, playing their parts, and pushing me further into the dark. The breaking point came on a Friday night in November. A heavy rain was drumming against the roof, drowning out the normal sounds of the house. Leo had announced he was leaving the next morning to travel to the coast. I felt a massive surge of relief, thinking this nightmare was finally ending. After dinner, I went to the garage to check the fuse box. I left the door to the house slightly ajar. I heard footsteps on the cold concrete behind me. It was Elena. She was holding 2 mugs of tea, her eyes red and puffy as if she had been crying. She set the mugs on my workbench and looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. "I need to tell you something," she whispered. My heart stopped. I knew what was coming, and I desperately wanted to stop her from saying it. "Don't," I said, my voice cracking under the pressure. But she didn't listen. She told me she couldn't do this anymore. She told me she loved me, but she wasn't in love with me. And then she said the words that broke my understanding of the world. She said, "You are the man I needed to feel safe, but he is the man who makes me feel alive." It was a brutal, honest knife to the chest. She wasn't just leaving me for my brother, she was categorizing me. I was the utility. In that single sentence, the entire mystery of female desire unraveled for me. There are only 2 reasons a woman falls for you. Either you are her peace or you are her chaos. And if you are only her peace, the moment she gets bored, she will seek out the chaos. The aftermath was a slow, agonizing demolition. Leo left the next morning as planned, but he didn't go alone. Elena packed a single suitcase and walked out the door with him. She didn't apologize. She just looked at me with a mixture of pity and resolve. The front door clicked shut, and the silence that rushed into the house was deafening. For the first few weeks, I functioned on autopilot. I went to work, answered emails, and bought groceries I didn't eat. I would find myself standing in the middle of our empty living room at midnight, staring at the walls. Every room held a ghost of her. The smell of her perfume still lingered in the master closet. A stray bobby pin sat on the bathroom counter, mocking me. I felt a rage I didn't know I possessed, but underneath it was a crushing sense of inadequacy. I had followed the blueprint of a good man. I provided, I listened, and I protected. Why wasn't that enough? I tried reaching out to Leo, but his phone was disconnected. Elena wouldn't return my calls. They had vanished into the wind, leaving me holding the wreckage of a life I thought we built together. My friends tried to comfort me, offering platitudes about how she didn't deserve me, but their pity felt like acid in my throat. They didn't understand the psychological scar she had left. She hadn't just broken my heart, she had broken my understanding of human nature. I began to look at other couples differently. I saw the same dynamic everywhere. Reliable men being taken for granted while unpredictable, Edge-dwelling men were worshipped. I realized I was part of a massive demographic of invisible providers. We are the builders of houses we don't get to feel warm in. The stress started taking a physical toll. I lost weight and my hair started thinning. I couldn't sleep without the TV on to drown out my own thoughts. I was terrified of being alone, but even more terrified of letting anyone close again. The fear that I was fundamentally boring, fundamentally replaceable, became a permanent fixture in my mind. It has been a year since that rainy night in the garage. The divorce papers were signed through lawyers without a single face-to-face meeting. I sold the big suburban house and moved into a smaller, modern apartment downtown. I needed a space that didn't have her fingerprints on it. I spend my weekends alone now, reading or walking by the river. It took a long time, but the white-hot anger has faded into a quiet, cold clarity. I no longer blame Leo, and I don't even blame Elena. They were just acting on primal human instincts. She wanted what she lacked, and I couldn't give it to her because it wasn't in my nature to be reckless. I am a builder. I create order out of chaos. That is who I am. I've started dating again recently, but it's different now. I don't try to be the perfect provider anymore. I don't try to make women feel completely safe. I keep a distance. I let them wonder where I am on a Friday night. It feels manipulative sometimes, but it's the only way I know how to survive now. I used to think a woman's love was a reward for being good. Now I know it's just a reaction to how much you can make her heart race.